about 2 or 3 decades ago, SUVs were all very simple machines. They used to go off-road like no one's business. They were agricultural, they were utilitarian, the interiors were all very Spartan, and there was nothing that was associated with them which would qualify as luxury item. But times move on, and they have moved on in such a way, and there has been such a dramatic shift in the whole SUV revolution that we now have come to expect some really fancy stuff in even the smallest SUVs. But the luxury end of the segment, which is essentially represented by the BMW X5 that I have over here, is a completely different ballgame. This is now no more that SUV which represents simplicity or utilitarian approach to the whole experience. This is all about fitting the page 3 of a tabloid. And these things are driven by celebrities, so they need to qualify on certain terms and conditions. The current generation X5 is now the 4th generation model. I really like the first and the second generation models, but of course those were slightly more analog times. Times have moved on, and we have this now. Welcome viewers, you are watching Pitstop, and as you would have guessed by now, our first story in this episode is the BMW X5. We have driven it, and while I'm not really going to talk any more about it, I'm going to leave you with this review where we have tried to cover everything about it. Take a look. As far as design is concerned, BMW has been doing some really outlandish and very obnoxious stuff of late. There are some very big grilled cars that you see not only in concept form but also in proper production form, and the X7 is one such example, as is the new 7 Series. The X5, while the grille is not as ugly as the 7 Series or the X7, it is still quite huge and dominates the front end in not a very appealing manner. But I'm going to move away from the outright aesthetics because I'm possibly not the best person to talk about beauty and style and all that. But behind all that, and looking beyond the grille section, the X5 is still that big, imposing, proper beast of an SUV with some improved mechanicals. But all that is separate because it appeals to a kind of person who's really not going to venture off-road at all. So it needs to be opulent, it needs to be desirable, it needs to be comfortable, it needs to have all the bells and whistles inside that you expect from a car in this segment. So I'm going to get behind the wheel and get started with experiencing what the X5 is all about. Come, let's go. Before I even started driving the X5, and while I was casually just checking the car out, I couldn't help but notice this one standout element when it comes to talking about the interiors, and that was the gear knob. It has this crystal effect, and it has the X of the X5 visible in a multi-dimensional way, and it just sort of looks very cool. So for me, this thing is an instant eye-catching element. And while we are on the topic of the interiors, I'll say that the combination of this camel-colored upholstery together with the black dashboard, that looks kind of rich, and it's something that definitely is the need of the hour, and it's just a given in this segment because we're talking north of about 70-80 lakh rupees. So the contrast and the richness that all the leather and the plastics and everything exude is absolutely on point. The wood paneling may look a little bit rough to your fingers, but it's a different and a very interesting approach. I personally really like it, and I don't know, I mean, it's questionable because I had a few people tell me that possibly is not the most enjoyable experience for them because a BMW, they expected to have absolutely flawless finish quality inside, the surfacing to be very smooth and everything, but I personally think it's a very nice element. It's different from others, and that's why it's just a little bit more interesting to me. But one very weird thing that I noticed is that the reflection of the sun from the iDrive unit, the top of which is finished in glass, is extremely annoying because the reflection is very strong and forms a glare in your eyes. That happens when the sun is at some particular angles, of course. Apart from that, it's all pretty solid. It's all pretty well laid out as well. Typical BMW affair. If you are familiar with any BMW cabin, you'll not find anything amiss over here as well. Everything is sort of laid out the way you would expect that element to be. So yeah, I mean, as BMW's cabin or the X5 is no different. Another very cool thing is that you get phone charging ports at the back of the front seat. So for the passengers who are sitting in the rear, they can charge their phones readily, and there is a wireless charging pad over here for the people sitting in the front. So in terms of overall equipment, all these things are now getting very regular in not only uber luxury cars but also some cars in the lower segments. And yes, whatever you can think of, BMW has thrown in the X5 and then some, because of course this is one of the flagship cars that they have. I would have really liked a little bit more pampering from the seats, because I am that guy who really is finicky when it comes to seat comfort. And these seats are fine, they're large, they're supportive enough, but I have noticed, and because I have been driving the X5 for some time now, I've driven well over about 800 kilometers or something like that, the seats, they tend to get a little tiresome because the bolstering is on the slightly harder side. On the sides, the support that you get kind of becomes a little, I wouldn't really call it irritating, because it's not irritating, but it does make you feel that, you know what, you have a little bit of something going on, which just leaves you feeling that cars like the Volvo XC90 or the equivalent Porsche, or, you know, those are slightly more plush. The Range Rover seats, for example, magnificent. And that's where my comparisons come in, because these seats, after say about 2 hours of driving or something, you do start to feel that, you know, something is not right. Range Rover or the XC90, I just did not feel that. The seats are really, really nice. And this one kind of lacks that ultimate comfort, I think. The refinement is what strikes you, and strikes you with a hammer. This one, the car that we are driving, is a diesel, and the cabin is so silent, and there is not even a hint of any vibration. That when I drove this car and had my dad around with me, he asked me whether this was a petrol. So I think that speaks really a lot about the levels of refinement that the X5 has. Talking of the engine, this is a 3-liter diesel engine that makes about 265 horsepower and 620 Newton meters of torque, which is of which the supply is managed by a very impressive 8-speed ZF gearbox, fairly strong, and you won't really feel the need of more power in the X5. But weirdly, if you do, BMW is going to ship you the X-Drive 40i, which is the petrol. It is also a 3-liter in capacity, but it develops 340 horsepower. So yes, if you want more power, if you want more energy from the X5, which, to be very honest, even the diesel that we have over here, the X-Drive 30D, is absolutely fine. You're not really going to feel like it's, you know, lacking on its lung capacity or its power delivery in any way, even when you're going flat out. But yes, for those who are more mental than the others, you have the 340 horsepower that comes in that 3-liter petrol engine. So go buy that. But on the topic of this diesel engine, it has very nice, very meaty mid-range, and the low end is also very, very potent. And of course, like every other BMW or actually every other luxury car nowadays, this X5 comes with multiple driving modes. So it spreads from comfort to sport and Eco Pro. So it goes from being comfy and pleasant to being very rapid at the push of some buttons. You can also, of course, customize the settings. You can get into the Eco Pro mode and customize the way you want the car to be, so you can have the suspension set up according to your needs. Similarly, in sport, you can go into the individual mode, set up the angry mode from everything that you want, or probably just customize the steering for comfort or sport or whatever. I mean, you can choose it according to your preference. The X5 has plenty of airbags in the cabin, but there are airbags even in the suspension. So at the push of this button right over here, you can raise the ride height, useful only when you're going over some really big rocks or doing some serious low-speed off-roading. And it will also drop down the suspension to its lowest setting to just let the dynamic abilities shine through. The X5 also has cruise control, and the brochure says that it comes with automatic braking. Now, I tried that, and unfortunately, we came very close to the car in the front, and that automatic braking did not really happen, and I was digging through the menus, everything. I don't know, I mean, there's something probably wrong with me in the head, but when it came too close for my comfort, I just braked myself and swerved away. Cruise control works brilliantly. You can set the speeds up and down, whatever you feel like. But yeah, that I think I'll have to probably go to the technicians at BMW and properly understand how that automatic braking happens. But through the menus and everything, whatever I fiddled around with, I could not really find anything that helped me activate that thing. So yeah, automatic braking was something that I did not find. But cruise control, yeah, I mean, it works. Now the X5 is a really big car, and you would expect that it gives you a lot of space and a lot of comfort. It does give you a great amount of comfort, no doubt about it. The seats, as I said, could be slightly better, but space, you would expect the space to be huge. Well, it's not really huge, but it's sufficient enough. A guy like me, with my driving position set in, I went and sat in the back, and there are a couple of issues that I find. The knee room is great. The very, very impressive thing about the rear seats is the way the rear is angled. So the seats over there, the bench over there is actually pretty sorted in terms of overall comfort. But when you glide your feet or your legs inside, or the feet inside the front seat when you're sitting on the rear, your shin gets sort of hindered in movement because of the frame of the front seat, and that really is not a very comforting thing. I would like to lounge a little bit because it's a big luxury car after all, so I want that freedom to slide my feet under the front seats, which is not really something that the X5 affords, sadly. So yes, the frame of the seat, the lower part, hits your shin, and that's not very good. When the X5 first got introduced in 1999 under the E53 platform code, it shared its off-road mechanicals with the Range Rover. Still, it was the true introduction, or rather justification, of the term sport in SUV, because the X5 really was sporty in its pretensions, and it was unlike any other product before it. Through its development now, the X5 has only been getting better and more opulent, but it is also getting a bit indirect, and that deep sense of connection that you had with the more analog X5 prior to this one, that is getting a bit lost. It's getting a bit detached. But 90% of all people who buy such kind of products, or actually make it 95 or even 99%, they never really take these cars off-road. So it's essentially that page 3 circles that the X5 needs to perform in, and it rides beautifully, it handles acceptably. It may not really be a great head turner, because I still think that there are some elements of design, execution that are not pretty, but the brand value is as strong as it has always been since the beginning. So as a celebration tool, it may not be as exciting as, say, a Porsche, or as special as the Volvo XC90, but it is special in its own right. From